Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At McMullen Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen, co-host of Birds 365. John McMullen, Sports Illustrated's John McMullen, covering the Birds on a day-to-day basis. Eagles minicamp day 2. Observations from John McMullen, the implementation of the new offense and the new defense, or perhaps, John, it's the same offense and the same defense, just with a new coordinator to make a few tweaks. You say what after day 2?
Well, definitely the same defensive scheme, but a different defensive coach, the originator of the scheme, the creator of the scheme. So, and a lot of cachet comes with that. No more second guessing, no more questioning. Because that's the kind of cachet Vic Fangio brings into the building. So, a lot of positive there. Brandon Graham made some news today. Ironic, I asked him a question, what's it like without Fletcher around? And, Fletcher was there today, by the way. But, on the field, we're talking about Jason Kelsey as well, who's going to be around. But they're no longer, that core 4 is not together, so to speak. That core 4 of Brandon Graham, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, only 2 of them left. And that was the question I asked. And Brandon took the baton and went in a totally different direction and started talking about Clint Hurt, the new defensive line coach. And then he turned into, and I want to get the exact quote. I really think that last year, that's what we didn't have. We didn't have all the right coaches in the right position, I would say. So, pretty damning words from Mr. Eagle. Nobody has played more games with this franchise ever than Brandon Graham. And he tries, he'll pass Chuck Bednarik for the most seasons in NFL history when he takes the field, and Eagles history when he takes the field in September. So carries a lot of weight, and the defense is excited about the ship to Big Fangio, and we'll see. They've looked good in the spring. They've clearly looked better than the offense, and they're not supposed to be better. So I guess that's a positive.
John, was there a follow-up on that, Brandon, on BG's statement?
Yeah, number of follow-ups. We was asked, basically, what do you mean by that? And he said, certain stuff you weren't on the same page, just here and there. Certain things would pop up, but it popped up in a big way that last game, which is the playoff game in Tampa. Everything I learned, you just want to make sure we had proper communication. And that was a big issue for this team on the field last year. And right now in the locker room, on the field, in the classroom, he thinks it's a lot better with Vic Fangio. Part of it is Sean Desai, ironically, is a Vic Fangio disciple, but he's very young. He only had 1 year of experience, and it's easy to question people who are inexperienced. Like, why are you doing this? Devin White talked about it. Vic, actually, Vic told us first. He said, I like to throw a lot at them early and then whittle it down. Sort of the exact opposite most coaches do. They start out slowly and keep building. He likes to throw a lot at the players early and then scale it back from there to see what they can handle. And that's the kind of thing that Sean did last year. And everybody was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? With Vic, it's like, all right, it's a Big Fangio. So they just accept it. And that's the difference between having that cachet and reputation and not. People will question you. They're not going to question Big Fangio. And if they do, they'll tell them, there's the door.
We'll stay with the defense first tonight, and then before we get out of here at the top of the hour, we will transition and have some conversation about the offense. I learned from you yesterday, John, day one of mini camp on the defensive side of the football, that Kaylee Ringo was sticking like glue and really putting himself in a position to kind of earn the moment or earn the spot across from Darius Slay. Was that the same today, or did Isaiah Rodgers get an opportunity to line up in the across from Slay, or how did it play out today?
Yeah, Isaiah Rodgers got most of the first team reps today. Everybody, they rotated guys. They did a bunch of 7-on-7 periods and one team 11-on-11 period. Rodgers started. He got the first rep opposite Slay. Ringo mixed in. Even Quinyon Mitchell mixed in, the rookie first-round pick. In that 11-on-11 session, it was Isaiah Rodgers. But, they're happy with all three of those players and all three of how they're progressing. And they're getting a look at every single one of them, and they've all performed well. Isaiah Rodgers was the Eagles' best player in the voluntary workouts, and Ringo was the best player yesterday. Today, you could have given it to a host of guys, but it's on the defensive side of the ball. Reed Blankenship probably gets it because he had a big interception, made a couple other plays as well. So it's been all defense to this point. Defenses are generally ahead of the offense. We talked about that. But when you see the difference in, talk about reputation and what's expected of this Eagles offense, it's kind of surprising how pedestrian it's been, even though it's spring, and I'm not going to sound the panic alarms or anything like that, but typically 7-on-7s are tilted toward the offense, and you can't find a splash play from it's been 4 practices now. So the best play today was about a 25 yard dig route from Jalen Hurts to AJ Brown, which is a nice play, a nice gain. There's no splash plays anywhere for the offense. It's been pretty amazing, the fact that they've been just pedestrian is the best way I can describe it.
I don't remember exactly how you would reference that during the post-game shows. It's not the play being called, it's the execution of the play that is criticized.
Yeah, well, no, yeah. I always say, if people don't judge play calls, they judge play results. They think they judge play calls because if a play is successful, they'll say that's a good play call. Not necessarily. Sometimes you got the wrong play call on, and maybe AJ Brown makes a great play and he saves your, what. In other instances, a play is unsuccessful, and you say, boy, what a stupid play call. And, maybe the right guard missed the block. And, Doug Peterson's the one who told me that. He said, sometimes you got the best. Sometimes as a coach, as a play caller, you're thinking, man, I got him. I got the perfect call for this situation, this defense. And a right guard misses the block and the whole thing's blown up. Nobody ever knows. It's deemed as a bad play call because it's a bad result. So, when it comes to play calls and that, far more, and even Kellen Moore said it at his press conference, you'll hear it from all coaches. The bottom line is a lot of people are talking about, they're going to continue talking about, it's going to be a theme in training camp as well. The motion, the illusion of complexity. Christian Parker talked about it from a defensive side. The eye washed, whatever you want to call it, orbit motion, jet motion, receivers moving. At the end of the day, Kellen Moore was asked, what's the most important part of your offense as a play caller? And he said, having a clean operation. And by that, he means obviously no penalties, but also executing well, doing what you're supposed to do. And that's what makes a successful play call and a successful offense.
I mean, Kellen Moore is being handed a high-powered offense, a very talented offense, playmakers on offense with the addition of Saquon Barkley. Perhaps you'd make an argument that they're even bigger, better, badder than they were a year ago with Saquon in the offense, and yet they're struggling. And I know it's May or June or whatever it is, and I don't want to make a big deal about it, but I kind of feel as when players are that skilled, their skill takes over no matter what the system is, and they look better than you're describing.
Yeah, well, that is, the concern, the fact that, look, typically anytime, the old joke Gil Brandt used to say, the football never hits the ground when Sam Bradford is in 7-on-7s, because he was such an accurate quarterback. And Chip Kelly used to say something similar when he was here. 7-on-7s are designed for the offense to be successful. It's an offensive drill. It's much easier for the offense than the defense. And the defense is dominating those drills. Yeah. This was the 31st ranked pass defense in the NFL last season against a top 10 offense. They lost Fletcher Cox. They don't have their line. They have new linebackers. They have a bunch of new cornerbacks, young cornerbacks, guys either being elevated like Kelly Ringo, or guys who are rookies like Quinyon Mitchell or Cooper DeJean. CJ's back. He wasn't here. Coming off an injury plagued season, a lot of changes, a lot of moving parts. They should be having some of the similar problems, and they're not. So it's not just, I don't want to dismiss it and say it's all because they're learning a new offense and learning new terminology. At some point, and AJ makes plays and Devontae makes plays, and Dallas was open today and Jalen threw it over the wrong shoulder. And ultimately these players are so good, they're going to make plays when the real games start. But it's strange how pedestrian it's been. It's strange how ordinary it's been.
Yeah,
I've been covering. Yeah, I've been covering this league for a long time. I've been to tons of OTA practices, too many to count. It should be easier. Right now, it's like pulling teeth for this offense.
John, when I hear you say that, in all seriousness, that is concerning to me. Now, again, who am I? What does it matter? But I'm just saying, you've got one more day of this, then you're off until you come back. You come into camp in July, which is not that far away, and you've got 6 weeks or whatever it is to get into a rhythm and to get ready to play, at least when the season starts. And it seems like they're miles away. Well, when I hear you say that, that's what makes me concerned. I don't want to overblow it, but wow, for you to say that, not one splash play out of that $125 million offensive side of the football.
every day I write down notes and I put asterisks next to the things I want to mention and my observations. And every day after practice ends, it's been 4 practices, I start looking for the offensive plays of the day, and there are not. We're talking about a 25-yard dig route as the play of the day. No touchdowns. You know, they had a back shoulder Kenny Pickett to Kenny Gainwell that ended practice in the first OTAs was a touchdown. Boy, I'll have to check with some of the other guys. I think that's it. I think there's been 1 touchdown. 1 touchdown. 1 touchdown from the offense in practice. By the way, the defense also has 1. So it's 1-1. And sometimes you start in the red zone. They haven't done a lot of red zone. That when they did score the touchdown, it was a red zone drill, so that's even easier. He had Dallas Goedert for a potential touchdown, overthrew him. I'm trying to think. It's had Kenny Pickett had John Ross deep. That would have been a touchdown. Underthrew it, turned into a Mekhi Gardner interception. Today, Dallas Goedert was open down the field for a big play. Threw it over the wrong shoulder. There have been opportunities. They just haven't been sharp throwing the football at all. And I expect it to get better, but you can only talk about what you've seen. And what, on a positive note, this defense is probably getting some confidence. And maybe that's a good thing. Yeah. Because everybody thought this defense was going to be terrible. And are looking a whole heck of a lot better than people expected.
So at the end of 2 days of Eagles mini camp, the spotlight on the offensive side of the football looks like it might be Mekhi Becton as the best off-season signing by Howie Roseman. If he held up today the way he held up yesterday or stood out, rather, not held up, but stood out today at that right guard position.
Well, he's playing left guard because Landon Dickerson.
He's playing left, right?
Yeah, Landon Dickerson is out, excused from practice, and he's been starting a left guard next to Jordan Mailata, which is pretty impressive. But understand, when it comes to running backs, and that's the thing, the running game is not involved. It's a glorified passing camp. Bobby King, the linebackers coach, said it, they're in their pajamas, basically. There's no pads. There's no physicality. So that's another thing about the Eagles offense. When they're able to have Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson and Lane Johnson and Cam Jurgens and whomever is going to be the right guard, whether it's Tyler Steen or Mekhi Becton or somebody else, they start to push people around. As I said, the running game is not involved right now. So when you're making these plays on the football, everybody's making plays on the football, whether it's Rodgers and Ringo and Mitchell and Cooper DeJean almost had an interception today.
Oh, I was waiting for my Cooper DeJean update. I was waiting to hear something good about Cooper. I love Cooper DeJean.
Yeah, he dropped an interception today. Reed Blankenship had an interception. They're all making plays on the football, but from that perspective, they all know what's coming. It's a pass. It's not a run. You don't run the ball in OTAs and minicamp because there's no physicality, there's no pads, there's no nothing. So it's all passing drills. And they're immediately dropping to their spots. So it's a little easier from that perspective for the defense. But every other year it's the same thing, and the offense manages to make some plays. So, maybe some of us who cover the team didn't put enough stock into the new offense, and because there's a lot of uncertainty with the quarterbacks, and I'm not sure they know what they're doing right now. And that's not just Jalen Hurts, but also Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee. So, it takes a while to get the terminology, to understand what you're trying to get accomplished. And right now it's not looking great, but as they get more comfortable and as that offensive line gets involved and Saquon Barkley in the running game becomes a threat, then in theory, it'll be easier to get things accomplished.
Any on 11? Oh, by the way, James Bradberry, any sort of update from him? I know he only from yesterday, if I remember correctly, he had a couple of plays and then he was in the tent and then he was just watching the rest of day one. Was he in attendance and a participant for day two or no?
He was there. He was in attendance, but he was just watching. He didn't even get any teamwork. He got hurt in individual drills, so he didn't even get to any of the team drills. So doubtful he'll be back tomorrow. And
what's the real story there, John? James Bradberry's going to play for a different football team in this season.
Yeah. That'll be the end game. The Eagles are obviously intent on getting something for him. But there might have been some concern that, Rodgers wasn't going to be able to come back. He's had over a 500-day layoff with his gambling suspension. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, it's hard for rookies, no matter how good they are, how talented, it's hard for them to get on the field right away. And maybe there was some concern, but they have so many of them, you would think one would hit. And we haven't even brought up Kelly Ringo, who might be the best of them all, to be honest, of the young corners. So they have so many young corners. One of them's going to hit. One of them's going to play well. And yeah, I just don't think James is going to be here, but the Eagles want something for him. And they're going to wait until they get something for him. It certainly looks like it.
Well, and if you're another team in this league, knowing that the Eagles are going to move on him, to even make a move and force the Eagles to just eat the money, whatever it is, and cut them.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the problem. Everybody else sees what I see, but there's dumb teams and there's also desperate teams. So
right.
There's OTAs or mini camps going on throughout the league this week. Next week, some teams have their mini camps next week. And they might come out of their off-season work and say, oh boy, we need some help at the cornerback position. There's a lot of cornerback deficient teams in this league. And then if you kick it all the way back to the summer, when injuries start to pile up in training camps, then you might have the desperation aspect of it, where a team loses a starting cornerback and they say, ooh, we need some help. And they're willing to give something up for James Bradberry. That seems to be what Howie is holding out for, and maybe he'll get it. And knowing his history, probably will get it. I don't know. I always tell Xander, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze. There's only a limited amount of reps, and they got around that in mini camp when he got hurt, whether that's real or not. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. They were able to avoid the fines. James is professional. He came in, but maybe it's a hold in. He doesn't want to get hurt. The Eagles don't want him to get hurt to affect that trade value. And all we can do is see what happens. But if you ask me, September 6th in Brazil, it's very, very unlikely that James Bradberry is going to be on this team.
Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen. You can get more in depth with day 2 observations tomorrow morning. Birds 365 with Xander Kraus and John McMullen. Johnny Mac, only a couple of minutes left here before I get you to give me your top 3 takeaways from today. Anything from Bryce Huff? Did you see him out there today? Is he out there? I haven't heard his name. I didn't hear his name yesterday. I didn't hear,
Yeah.
No,
is
he there in the Vic Fangio defense?
Yeah. I mean, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, running backs, they don't do much in these camps. They're not, Vic has hook defenders and generally guys like Hupp are on the field. They're practicing coverage when they're going to drop in coverage. And everybody gets upset by that because they want them rushing the passer. Well, they don't rush the passer. And they do it very infrequently. As I said, they had 1 11-on-11 period today, and they had 1 blitz, and Devin Waite got home. But again, we're talking about blitzes against offensive linemen with no pads on. It's not the time for offensive linemen, defensive front people, running backs, any physicality. This is about receivers and the passing game and coverage and quarterbacks and defensive backs.
2 minutes left, Johnny.
2
minutes left in this report, this edition of Football 24/7. Your couple of takeaways, 2-3 takeaways from day 2, bullet points, if you will, that other than still searching tonight for that one big play from the offensive side of the football. Give me a couple.
Well, that's the biggest one, and that is big. I am impressed by those young corners. And Rogers has been tremendous. Kaylee Ringo's been great. Quinyon Mitchell. They've unveiled this sort of dime look. Some people call it a big nickel, whatever. There's 1 linebacker on the field and a bunch of defensive backs. And Quinyon Mitchell's played inside as sort of the extra linebacker, which I didn't think we'd see. Cooper DeJean gets some looks in that big nickel, dime defense, whatever you want to call it, as well. So, that's sort of what Vic Fangio was talking about when he said he likes to throw a lot at the players early. And then he goes sort of the opposite of what everybody else does and whittles it down to what they do well as he moves forward. So we're in that he's throwing the kitchen sink at the players and he's throwing out some interesting looks. Will Shipley had a nice day, with the second and third team catching the football, which was nice to see because when he first got here, he seemed to be really fighting it. And maybe he's getting a little bit more comfortable, and he had a nice day today. They finally targeted Saquon Barkley. They haven't even targeted him. They finally targeted him twice. He actually caught a pass. It was on a rub route with A.J. Brown. A little 6-7 yard gain, but it was nice to see him get involved at least. He's been a decoy mainly to this point. Zach Bond is another player that's interesting. He was, on one of those dime looks, he was the only linebacker on the field. So it wasn't Nakobe Dean, it wasn't Devin White, it was Zach Bond, and that's a player that Vic Fangio seems to have latched on to. And maybe the most interesting part is in the weeds, but for the first time, the Eagles practiced the new kickoff returns because they're changing the rules. And Jake Elliott did a nice job with the kickoffs. They also, were trying out a bunch of different kick return duos. And what they're doing is they're having 2 returners back, a split returner approach with the new rules. And whoever catches it, because it depends on where the football's going from the kicker, the other one turns into an up back who blocks. So interesting way of dealing with it. Guys like Kenny Gainwell, Britton Covey. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was back returning kickoffs. Aniyah Smith, some of the younger guys, Ty Davis-Price, Kendall Milton, John Ross was involved, Isaiah Rogers, Paris Campbell. So they're trying everybody at kickoff returns.
Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen. Eagles minicamp day 2 now comes to a close. Remember, in depth tomorrow on Birds 365 with Xander Kraus and Johnny Mack, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Tomorrow. As Xander always says, don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out of the JAKIB Sports YouTube channel and this show tonight. Johnny Mack, great stuff, brother. Appreciate it. Appreciate the hard work done by you today.
All right. Thanks, Krause. Appreciate
right.
everybody listening.
Yep, you got it. See you next time, everybody.
Any professional sports coach will tell you there's no substitution for preparation. At McMullen Associates, that is a tenet by which we live. We prepare from day one for victory. Anything less is not acceptable.
EAGLES, Eagles.